Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from Chesterfield rise for a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman mentioned that that we can't spend this money twice, and I agree with that. But also, it's my understanding that the $125 million that he's proposing that we turned down today would fund these two changes. By the way, the federalism issue, that's left the door millions, about 100 years ago. You know, we do so many things here that the federal government requires us to do. But these two changes that you refer to as an entitlement program would be paid for 18 years by the $125 million. Is that not true?
Mr. Speaker, I would say that it's my understanding that those are the numbers that have been represented in relationship to this. I will say this in response to that. A week ago, when the press release came out about the cost of this, the cost was, I believe, the quote was $18 million a year. A week later, yesterday, at the Manufacturing Commission meeting, the commissioner of the VEC said their new estimate was $20 million. So in a period of 1 week, the cost has gone up 10%. So I'm concerned about what really is the cost of this and how long does that money play out. We don't know the answer to that.
Further question, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman
yield?
I yield, Mr. Speaker.
Would the gentleman agree that $125 million goes a long way toward these rather small changes that we're being asked to make?
It was interesting to me, Mr. Speaker's sentiment. I think he said it would play out 14 years, something like that. If the VEC's latest estimates are correct, that's like 5 years, 6 years, maybe. We don't know.
Further question, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yield?
I yield, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields.
Well, I would ask the gentleman, 6 years sounds like a good long time. I'll take 6 years if that's what he thinks it would pay for. But right now, a person can qualify for unemployment working a certain amount of hours, in whether their job is termed part-time or not, and you mentioned that. What is wrong? What's the policy reason that we have this current situation where we force people to look for a full-time job when I could think of several different legitimate reasons why someone would want to replace the job that they've had for all these years, which they qualified for UI, and now we're forcing them to do a type of job that they haven't been doing all these years that they could, again, if they got one, qualify for unemployment in the future.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think we force them at all. My understanding is, for example, if you're working in, say, a 30-hour-a-week job and you lose that job, that your requirement is not that you go out there and find a 40-hour-a-week job, but that you find a job that is comparable to the one that you had. That's my understanding of how the system works. It doesn't force someone to do something that they don't have the job skills to do on their own. That's not what the system does.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I ask a further question?
I yield, Mr. Speaker.
Then the gentleman, are you saying that we don't really need to change the law here, that we would qualify for the federal funds under our current policy?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not saying that at all. What we've been told by the federal government, this is what the gentleman from Roanoke County was trying to state earlier, is that we are being asked, I mean, the federal government has basically pulled out our charge card. I mean, it's sort of like identity theft. They've taken our charge card, they've rung up trillions of dollars of our debt for our future, and now on top of that, they're coming to us and say, Virginia, in order for you to be able to provide this money for your citizens, or you to be able to spend it the way you see fit, you've got to do it our way. And I know that some of us don't think that's the way that we should be governing. And, you know, we accepted a lot of federal stimulus money in our budget. This piece here represents, I believe, around 2% of that amount, only 2% of that amount.
Mr. Speaker, further question. The gentleman yield for
Gentleman yield for additional question.
I yield, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields.
So I believe the gentleman is agreeing in part that this part-time worker thing is a relatively small change, but we don't really like the federal government requiring us to do that to get $125 million. But moving on to the training program, what is wrong from a policy standpoint from the federal government saying to us, we'll give you $125 million if the person is going to a high-demand job where we know that if they complete training in 26 weeks, They will have a job, be back paying taxes, buying stuff, helping the economy get moving again. What's wrong with that from a policy standpoint, Mr. Speaker?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't know that there's anything wrong with it per se, but what I said earlier is that you're moving our system towards something other than what it was intended to do. We already have a multitude of training programs. As a matter of fact, some of our training programs are a little bit of a mess because so many different entities in the state government have that responsibility of providing different aspects of workforce training. This reminds me, I know the gentleman wasn't around, this reminds me of some of the debate that occurred in the mid-1990s around welfare reform. And we said, why should somebody not be allowed to be on a full-time work program and still receive the benefits? It's a shared responsibility. It's a shared responsibility. I don't see anything that's wrong with it per se, except that it's a permanent change that over time will make it more expensive to do business in Virginia. And it's the small businesses that account for 60–70% of the new growth employment in the Commonwealth. They are the ones who will pay a disproportionate share of that increased cost when this money runs out.
I thank the gentleman.